Let's look at the Burris X-treme Tactical. This is kind of a popular one. A lot of guys like this. 30 millimeter tube, that's a good thing. That's desirable. That'll give us a good range of elevation. This one does have a magnification that's variable, 6 to 24 on this particular model. And it's in the second focal plane, which is kind of a bummer. And it took a long time for American scope companies to start to figure this out, but the second focal plane on a tactical scope with a mil-dot reticle is pretty much silly. I don't know what they're thinking there. So it does have the mil-dot reticle, but it's in the second focal plane, so that's basically useless. And also, it's got the minute of angle units of measurement on our turrets again, which is different than the milliradians and the reticle. So the features, like, not so good on the Burris X-treme Tactical for our applications. And if you watch the preceding videos, I expound upon each one of these features in great detail. Let's look at the quality of the Burris. They have pretty good quality. They have good turret tracking, so that would be fine. It's going to track just fine. The mechanics of the scope are good. The internal build quality is good. I think Burris is the one that uses kind of a lot of the brass seals that hold the lenses kind of apart. And, you know, a lot of companies use like glued-in neoprene and stuff, but I think Burris builds their stuff pretty heavy-duty. Optical Clarity is not bad. They have pretty good quality control when they're going through the pile of lenses. Overall ruggedness, Burris seems to be put together not too bad. And general quality is B. But the features are going to be what kills it. So if someone tried to ask me if they were looking at one of these extreme tactical scopes, I think they're really a lot more suitable for maybe other purposes. Like if you have an AR-15 or something like that, and you're not going to be using those elevation turrets, and you're really only shooting out 300-400 yards or something like that, one of these extreme tacticals would be pretty cool. But for our purposes, that second focal plane is going to kill you. You need those mil dots to actually be spaced 1 mil apart all the time. And it's really going to hinder you also to have different units of measurement in your turrets and your crosshairs. So I don't know. I would not put my stamp of recommendation on that particular model just because of the features. The quality is just fine. The quality is good on these, but I would not use it for extreme range applications for those deficiencies in the features. Now, here's one that's actually a pretty good value for the most part. There's one that if you're looking for the absolute cheapest possible scope that you can find that will sort of work for long-range applications and you're really on a budget, the Bushnell Elite Tactical. It's only got a 1-inch tube, so that's not very desirable. But if you got a slanted scope base, like if you got a 20 or 30 minute of angle base, that'll help you out there. So you might want to, you're not going to have a huge range of elevation within the scope, so you're going to want a tilted scope base. This one I'm talking about, the one I chose here, the Elite Tactical, I would not use the variable. The one that's going to be a good value is the straight 10 power. You'll also notice that this Bushnell Elite has the elevation and windage turrets in minutes of angle. But for the money here, it's still going to be a pretty good value, even though the mil dots ain't matching up with the minutes. So our overall feature score is C. And if we go over here and look at our quality matrix, we're going to look at the Bushnell Elite, and the turret tracking is acceptable. It's we're given a score of a B. Now we're looking for 100% reliable tracking, so it's kind of weird how I got this grade set up here on this tracking category, because it should be a pass-fail, but really I give it a B if it's not like 100% shining reviews, because you know, if a guy just tests one of these scopes in just like a single test, that's not really representative of the entire cross-section of all the different various scopes they put out. Sometimes, you know, it varies from scope to scope and from the way different people look at them and the way different people conduct their tests and the scientific method that they've applied or perhaps that they didn't apply. So this is basically an overview of all the different reports. And from pretty much everything I've heard, the Bushnell Elites, most guys say they're pretty good. Some of the real hardcore reviewers say that the tracking is like not totally perfect when you reach the extensions of the elevation range. like when you're getting towards the periphery of your adjustment range, like towards the edge. And then sometimes the angular units of measurement are a little bit off. That's not so much of the tracking, but what we talked about optical vignetting before is it's harder to polish the lenses towards the edge. So that's just having to do more with lens quality. So when you're way towards the edge of the lens on some of these more budget optics, your tracking, although it's not technically tracking, will seem to be imperfect. The internal build quality is okay on these. The optical clarity is actually pretty good on these Tactical Elites, and one of the reasons is because it's a straight 10 power, and we talked about fixed powers before, and generally speaking, fixed power does have pretty good optical clarity comparatively speaking when you compare them up to like variable power. Overall ruggedness is still only a D, even though it's a fixed power. If this was a variable scope, this would fail in the ruggedness category because it's a $199 scope, so it's a budget scope, and it's not going to really be as heavy duty as a lot of other ones. But being that it is a straight 10 power, I didn't give it an F on ruggedness, but it will have a D. The ruggedness is also talking about, when you look at this Bushnell Elite, it's kind of a retrofit sporting optic that was equipped with some tactical style turrets. So that's one of the primary reasons why it didn't get a better score for ruggedness, because it's just not really designed for that. And you slam it around, you probably will break it. The general quality was acceptable on this for our purposes. So if you're strapped for cash and basically you need an optic that's going to work for long-range applications, and you absolutely don't want to spend any money or just maybe thinking about getting into it, this is the only scope for under $300 that I could actually probably put my stamp of approval on. Don't expect perfect performance, but it will work pretty good. If you were going to be working, in a serious job, like if you're going to be using this in combat applications or even for law enforcement or something, I would strongly recommend getting a higher quality scope than this. Maybe spend another $100 and you can make a pretty good quality jump, especially when we're talking about the lower price ranges. The lower price range scopes, there's bigger differences in quality per dollar value. It's when you really get in your high-end scopes where it takes a lot more money to get a little bit more quality, and that's kind of that way with everything. So this Bushnell Elite is a pretty good value for the money. Let's see here. And mind you, that's the 10 power. They do make variable ones. That doesn't apply to those. I would not get the variable ones. They're just not going to have the ruggedness or even the tracking is going to be even worse on those, and that's going to be having to do with the erector assembly. Okay. The Falcon. This is one of another optic that's kind of a budget optic. That's kind of a newer brand. I wasn't very familiar with these until recently, but the Falcon Menace is the one we're going to look at. And this is a 30 millimeter scope, so that's desirable. We're going to have a good elevation range. Now, this is a variable power optic in the first focal plane. So that's good. If you have a variable power optic, you're going to absolutely need it in the first focal plane. The one that I have representing Falcon Menace here is the 4 to 14 power. They do make higher magnification settings, but for an optic in this price range, I would not recommend going with any higher magnification than 14 because you're just going to be zooming in on optical imperfections. That's why I chose that power setting. It does have the mil-dot reticle, and being it's in the first focal plane, that's going to work fine. And your elevation and windage adjustments are also in milliradians, which matches your reticle, which is highly desirable. So feature-wise, for whoever designed this Falcon Menace, they knew what they were doing. And I gave it an A on features. Now let's look at the quality of the features. In the Falcon Menace, according to the reports from some people who I do respect and I trust their opinion, who have been using these in the field for various purposes, they have real good, reliable turret tracking. According to them, they said they had absolutely no problems. And the internal build quality, it seems to be pretty good. Now, this is a budget scope, so it's not going to be as good as some other ones, but it passes the test there. The optical clarity is going to be okay. Now, if we're talking about the higher magnifications again, you got to be very careful on budget optics with high magnifications. It's not going to be any more clear. So in the 4 to 14, the optical clarity is fine. The overall ruggedness seems to be fine on these. They seem to be a pretty good value. The general score was a C for quality, and the features score was an A. So this would probably have an overall score of a B, if you compared your features and the quality of the features. So if you're looking for a budget optic in a variable power, this would be the only one in that category that I would probably be able to recommend. The features are spot on. They knew what they were doing when they designed it, and assuming all those features would properly work, which they seem to work under normal circumstances, this will be a pretty good scope considering the money. I think they're a few $100, $300 range or something like that. So again, I would strongly recommend trying to go for a straight power optic, especially if you're in this price range, just because you're going to get way more ruggedness, and all your quality is going to be higher with the straight power optics, as we talked about before in the preceding videos. But if you really have your heart set on a variable power for some reason, or if your mission criteria does demand variable power for some weird reason, then I would definitely say that this is probably better than a lot of the other budget scopes. The next one we're going to look at is the IOR Valdata.